March 26, 1943. Dawn. Southern Tunisia. Thin orange line of sunrise cuts across the jagged ridges of the Mareth line as a cold desert wind pushes sand across a battered German outpost. Inside a dugout, reinforced with sandbags and sheet metal, Oberfeldwebel Hans Kruger lifts a pair of field binoculars to his eyes, still half amused from the night before. Out on the horizon, several dark shapes crawl across the sand. American tanks. Kruger smirks. He's seen these before. M4 Shermans. To veteran panzer crews like him, they are nothing more than clumsy, gasoline-filled targets. Blechspielzeug, he calls them. Tin toys. One of his gunners joked they looked like tractors with aspirations. Another called them burning coffins, lighting a cigarette as if to confirm the point. But as the wind settles and the sun rises, something feels different. There aren't just a handful of Shermans moving across the desert floor. There are dozens, and behind them, more dust clouds. And behind those, an entire armored column stretching so far he can't even see the end. Kruger lowers his binoculars. The smirk is gone. Because these tanks aren't driving with the hesitant, scattered movements the Germans have grown used to from inexperienced American crews. They're moving with purpose. Tight spacing, coordinated turns, radio chatter guiding every shift. As if someone had finally taught the Americans how to fight in the desert. As if someone dangerous had arrived. Miles behind those tanks, riding in a dusty command vehicle with a pair of ivory-handled pistols strapped to his hips, Lieutenant General George S. Patton studies the battlefield with an expression that says he's already 10 steps ahead of everyone on it. His armored divisions have spent weeks drilling, re-equipping, and rehearsing a single goal: break the German line, break their confidence, break their myth of superiority. Now, at first light, the Shermans begin to fan out, left, right, center, until the formation resembles a massive steel wave rolling toward the German positions. Inside one of the lead Shermans, Sergeant Bill Harkins feels the engine rumble beneath him. The hull vibrates with a low, metallic growl as the desert heat slowly seeps into the tank's interior. Sweat drips from his eyebrows, but he barely notices. His eyes are fixed on the ridge ahead, on the dugouts, the anti-tank guns, the panzers hidden among the rocks. The men know what they're driving into. They also know what the Germans think of them. Toy tanks, soft armor, underpowered guns. But today, something shifts in the air. Today, the Shermans aren't alone. They're part of a coordinated assault. Infantry, artillery, air support, and armor synchronized in a way the Germans had not yet seen from the Americans in North Africa. And as the first artillery whistles overhead and slams into the ridge, Sergeant Harkins grips the turret handles tighter. He can almost feel the moment approaching. The split second when German mockery transforms into something far heavier. Respect. Or fear. Up on the ridge, Kruger finally spots movement among the rocks. The long barrel of a Panzer IV swings toward the advancing Shermans. He knows what comes next. One accurate German shot. One fireball. One more confirmation that American tanks are nothing but targets. But before the Panzer can fire, a thunderous blast shakes the entire ridge. Kruger flinches. That wasn't the Panzer. That was something else. Something coming from the American line. He raises the binoculars one more time, and what he sees turns the cold morning wind into something that feels like dread. The Shermans aren't stopping. They're accelerating, straight toward the German armor, straight toward his position, straight into a fight the Germans thought they had already won. Kruger mutters a curse under his breath, because for the first time, he isn't sure who's hunting who. The sun is higher now, sharp, white, merciless. It glints off tank barrels and shattered stones as the desert begins to shimmer with heat. Down below, the Sherman spearhead roars forward like a rolling storm. Inside his tank, Sergeant Bill Harkins hears the commander's voice crackle through the intercom. Enemy armor ahead. 200 meters. Hold steady. The crew locks in. No jokes now. No nerves. Just breathing, sweat, and the heavy smell of oil and cordite. Through the periscope, Harkins finally sees it, a Panzer IV hull down behind a stone berm, turret slowly turning to greet them. The German gunners are famous for their precision. This is the moment everyone expects the Sherman to die. The turret stops, the barrel dips, a heartbeat. Then, crack, a flash, a shriek, a plume of dust exploding in front of the Sherman's tracks. The German round hits short. Harkins doesn't wait. Fire! His gunner squeezes the trigger. The 75mm cannon detonates inside the turret. The recoil kicks back like a sledgehammer. A bright streak punches across the desert and slams into the Panzer armor with a deafening clang. Smoke, sparks, but the Panzer holds. The Germans swing their turret to adjust for the second shot. "Traverse left! Bring us onto him!" Harkin's voice is steady, but fast, each syllable sharpened by adrenaline. Another round snaps past the Sherman's turret, so close Harkins feels the tank shudder from the near hit. The next German shot won't miss. Unless a shadow swoops overhead. Everyone looks up. A pair of American P-40 Warhawks slice through the sky, diving like hawks with their machine guns blazing. Tracer fire rakes the ridge. German crews duck for cover. A Panzer commander throws himself backwards as bullets spark across his turret. The Panzer IV meant to kill Harkins shifts its barrel, just slightly, just enough. "Send it!" Harkins barks. Boom! This time the round punches through. The Panzer turret smokes, then erupts in a violent burst of flame. The hatch bursts open and two crewmen scramble out, rolling into the sand as the fire roars behind them. In the dugout above, Oberfeldwebel Hans Kruger stands frozen. This shouldn't be happening. American tanks don't push straight into Panzer positions. American air cover doesn't arrive this fast. American coordination isn't this. But as the desert becomes impossible to deny, the truth manifests. The Shermans aren't attacking alone. They're attacking as a machine. Artillery hammering the high ground, infantry advancing between the dunes, air support tearing through German strongpoints. This is no longer the hesitant, disorganized force the Afrika Korps had faced in February. This is Patton's army, and it moves like a fist. Kruger rushes to the field phone and shouts into it, "Break them now, before they reach the second ridge!" But when he steps out of the dugout again, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. The Shermans have already reached it, not crawling, charging. Dozens of them, kicking up a rolling wall of dust as they thunder toward the heart of the German line. Kruger grips the edge of the sandbag wall so tightly his knuckles turn white. Because this was supposed to be another easy victory, another day where the Germans teach the green Americans a lesson. But now the lesson is reversing, fast. And as the Shermans spread out, maneuvering with speed the Germans never expected from them, Kruger feels something he hasn't felt in a long time on this front. Unease. Then a new sound rises over the battlefield. Engines. Deep, heavy engines. German reinforcements. Panzers. Real Panzers. Kruger exhales, relieved, just for a moment. Because what comes next will decide everything. A clash of steel giants. A test of fire and doctrine. A moment that will determine whether German mockery survives the day or burns in it. A rumble trembles through the rocky ridge. Deep, heavy, unmistakable. It's the sound every Sherman crew fears and every German soldier prays for. Panzer reinforcements. From a shallow wadi behind the German line, the first dark shape emerges. A Panzer III, turret scanning, followed by a faster, heavier silhouette, a Panzer IV Ost G, its long 75mm cannon jutting forward like a spear. Behind them, four more armored shapes rise from the ravine like waking predators. The Afrika Korps is ready to counterattack. Up on the ridge, Oberfeldwebel Hans Kruger feels the tension in his chest loosen. This is where German armor excels, decisive, concentrated counterstrikes. The Shermans might have numbers, they might have momentum, but Panzers have something else. Precision, training, and the hard-won confidence of men who have fought across half of Europe. Kruger slams his fist onto the dugout rail. "Push them back! Crush their center before they envelop us!" The German radio net crackles alive. Commands bounce from tank to tank like electricity. "Panzer Group advance in wedge formation. Target American..." He can feel the shift in mood inside the Sherman. The gunner straightens up. The loader clenches his jaw. Everyone knows the truth. This is the fight that counts. The Shermans grind to a halt, turning their hulls and elevating their guns. Dust drifts past their tracks like smoke. Engines roar. The two armored waves, American and German, face one another across a sun-blasted valley, momentarily still, like duelists waiting for a signal. Then, a single German round snaps across the sand. It slams into the front hull of a Sherman, just 3 tanks to Harkin's left. The impact is instant, the explosion deafening. Flames erupt through the hatch as the turret lurches sideways. The Sherman burns. "Jesus," Harkins whispers. No one needs to be reminded. The Panzer IV's QWK-40 can punch through almost anything the Shermans have. And the battle begins to tilt. One more Sherman is struck, then another. Panzers aren't just firing, they're coordinating, cross-firing, forcing the Americans into kill zones. Kruger watches it all unfold with a grim smile. This is how it always goes. But something happens he doesn't expect. Instead of panicking, instead of scattering, instead of falling back, the Shermans advance. Not recklessly, not blindly. In a staggered pattern, leapfrogging forward, one group firing while the other moves, maintaining constant pressure. A tactic drilled into them by one man, Patton. From his command vehicle, Patton's voice explodes over the radio. "Don't stop until those panzers know who owns this damn desert." The Shermans surge again. Harkins grips the handles as the gunner lines up a new target, a Panzer III cutting across the valley floor at full speed. Lead him, Harkins whispers. The gunner fires. A burst of dust and flame sprays from the Panzer's flank as the shell slams home. The German tank veers sharply, smoke trailing from its engine deck. Not a kill, but a wound. Enough to slow it, enough to open a door. Finish him. The loader slams another shell into the breach with a grunt. The second round hits the Panzer square in the turret ring. This time it stops moving. The crew crawls out, coughing, hands raised as they stumble away from the wreck. In the ridge above, Krugen's stomach twists. He watches Sherman after Sherman push through shells and smoke, refusing to break. What kind of army takes losses like this and keeps coming? A tense silence settles over the battlefield, broken only by the roar of engines and the crack of distant guns. But beneath the noise, a deeper truth grows clear. This isn't the same American force the Germans humiliated at Kasserine Pass. These men have changed, these tanks have changed, their leadership has changed, and the Germans are starting to feel it. Kruger grips his binoculars so tightly the leather digs into his palms. If the Shermans close the distance any further, the Panzer advantage evaporates. He whispers to himself, "Stop them now, or we lose the whole valley." Below, the Panzers begin their all-or-nothing charge, a thunderous final gamble. The counterattack everyone has been waiting for. A collision of steel racing towards the center of the battlefield, where something unexpected is about to happen. The German counterattack erupts like a hammer strike. 6 Panzers surge forward, tracks tearing grooves through the sand, engines howling as they pick up speed. Their turrets stay locked on the American center, barrels spitting fire as they advance in a deadly staggered line. This is the classic Afrika Korps maneuver. Close the gap, crush the momentum, shatter the enemy's will. And for a moment, it looks like it might work. Another Sherman takes a direct hit. The shell slams through the thin side armor, bursting out the opposite flank in a blinding fireball. The turret lifts, smoke billowing into the bright sky. Sergeant Bill Harkins winces. That was Miller's tank, his friend, his training partner. Gone in an instant. Harkins, stay focused, his commander snaps through the intercom as another German round whistles past their turret. The valley becomes a furnace, everything shaking, everything screaming. Shells hiss overhead like enraged hornets. Machine gun tracers carve red lines through the air. And still, the Panzers close in. Inside his dugout, Oberfeldwebel Kruger feels triumph surge in his chest. This is the moment German doctrine promises, the decisive blow that sends the enemy reeling. "Forward! Do not let them regroup!" he shouts into the radio. But down on the valley floor, the Shermans do something that floods Kruger with disbelief. They stop retreating, they stop adjusting. They hold. 5 Shermans, 4, 3, side by side, engines roaring, turrets elevating in perfect unison. A wall of American steel refusing to yield a single meter. Inside the center tank sits Harkins, sweat dripping into his eyes, hands trembling as he grips the turret handles. He sees the lead Panzer IV charging towards him, barrel pointed like a lance, the German commander half exposed from the hatch, shouting orders. The distance closes. 150 meters. At 50 meters, there's no room for error, no room for luck, no room for fear. Harkins steadies his breath. At my mark. The Panzer's turret flashes, a shot fired at point-blank range. It's aimed perfectly. Harkins' heart seizes, but the ground erupts. A massive plume of sand sprays upward between the tanks, the Panzer's round hitting a low dune instead of the Sherman's hull. A near miss, one that won't happen twice. Mark! The Sherman fires. The recoil slams through Harkins' spine as the 75mm round blasts from the barrel and punches straight into the Panzer's glacis plate. A burst of flame erupts from the engine deck. The Panzer veers sharply, tracks grinding, smoke pouring from its vents. Not a kill, but a wound. Enough to slow it, enough to open a door. Finish him!
The loader slams another shell into the breach with a grunt. The second round hits the Panzer square in the turret ring. This time it stops moving. The crew crawls out, coughing, hands raised as they stumble away from the wreck. In the ridge above, Kruger's stomach twists. He watches Sherman after Sherman push through shells and smoke, refusing to break. What kind of army takes losses like this and keeps coming? A tense silence settles over the battlefield, broken only by the roar of engines and the crack of distant guns. But beneath the noise, a deeper truth grows clear. This isn't the same American force the Germans humiliated at Kasserine Pass. These men have changed, these tanks have changed, their leadership has changed, and the Germans are starting to feel it. Kruger grips his binoculars so tightly the leather digs into his palms. If the Shermans close the distance any further, the Panzer advantage evaporates. He whispers to himself, "Stop them now, or we lose the whole valley." Below, the Panzers begin their all-or-nothing charge, a thunderous final gamble. The counterattack everyone has been waiting for. A collision of steel racing towards the center of the battlefield, where something unexpected is about to happen. The German counterattack erupts like a hammer strike. 6 Panzers surge forward, tracks tearing grooves through the sand, engines howling as they pick up speed. Their turrets stay locked on the American center, barrels spitting fire as they advance in a deadly staggered line. This is the classic Afrika Korps maneuver. Close the gap, crush the momentum, shatter the enemy's will. And for a moment, it looks like it might work. Another Sherman takes a direct hit. The shell slams through the thin side armor, bursting out the opposite flank in a blinding fireball. The turret lifts, smoke billowing into the bright sky. Sergeant Bill Harkins winces. That was Miller's tank, his friend, his training partner. Gone in an instant. Harkins, stay focused, his commander snaps through the intercom as another German round whistles past their turret. The valley becomes a furnace, everything shaking, everything screaming. Shells hiss overhead like enraged hornets. Machine gun tracers carve red lines through the air. And still, the Panzers close in. Inside his dugout, Oberfeldwebel Kruger feels triumph surge in his chest. This is the moment German doctrine promises, the decisive blow that sends the enemy reeling. "Forward! Do not let them regroup!" he shouts into the radio. But down on the valley floor, the Shermans do something that floods Kruger with disbelief. They stop retreating, they stop adjusting. They hold. 5 Shermans, 4, 3, side by side, engines roaring, turrets elevating in perfect unison. A wall of American steel refusing to yield a single meter. Inside the center tank sits Harkins, sweat dripping into his eyes, hands trembling as he grips the turret handles. He sees the lead Panzer IV charging towards him, barrel pointed like a lance, the German commander half exposed from the hatch, shouting orders. The distance closes. 150 meters. At 50 meters, there's no room for error, no room for luck, no room for fear. Harkins steadies his breath. At my mark. The Panzer's turret flashes, a shot fired at point-blank range.
Keep driving, don't give them time to breathe. And the Shermans obey. They slam into the German flank like a tidal wave. The valley explodes into chaos. Panzer crews pivot desperately, turrets jerking as they try to re-aim, but they're too slow, too few, too cornered. A Sherman from the new column fires first. Its round streaks across the valley and tears through the side armor of a Panzer III, flipping it into a plume of black smoke. Another Panzer tries to reverse, too late. A Sherman from Harkins' line nails it with a perfect shot through the transmission housing. 2 kills in seconds. And the wave keeps coming. Dozens of Shermans roar past Harkins' position, dust blasting into his turret as they cut around the flank and drive straight into the German rear positions. The Afrika Korps line, once rigid and disciplined, begins to waver, then crack, then fracture completely. In the ridge above, Kruger watches his battlefield dissolve. Anti-tank guns are overrun, motorized infantry scatter under the weight of combined fire. Panzer crews abandon burning hulls, sprinting through smoke as Shermans charge past them. This can't be happening. Not here. Not to the veterans of North Africa. He slams the phone to his ear, shouting, "All units fall back! Fall back!" But the order comes too late. The trap is already closed. Shermans sweep into the valley from 2 angles. The original spearhead from the east, Patton's hidden brigade from the west. The German armor is caught in the jaws of a tightening vice. Harkins sees it clearly now. For the first time in the entire North African campaign, the Americans aren't reacting, aren't chasing, aren't surviving. They're dominating. His loader laughs, a disbelieving, breathless sound. "Harkins, we're actually winning!" But there's no time to celebrate.
A Panzer IV bursts from behind a rock formation, gunning straight toward them. Its commander is exposed, shouting orders, desperation etched into every movement. Harkin's gunner swings the turret. The Panzer fires first. The round screams past the Sherman's turret, missing by inches. "Take him!" Their shot answers with brutal finality. The Panzer erupts in a violent fireball, rolling to a stop as ammunition cooks off inside the hull. Another kill. Another piece of the German line shattered. Across the valley, a horrifying sight spreads. German crews abandoning positions, officers signaling retreat, panzers reversing in panic as the Shermans bear down on them with unstoppable momentum. Kruger, still gripping the binoculars, feels something he hasn't felt since the war began. Not fear. Not shock. Something deeper. Realization. A cold, sharp understanding that slices through him like a blade. The Americans aren't the inexperienced, chaotic force they mocked at Kasserine. They've learned. They've adapted. And with Patton shaping them, they're becoming something the Afrika Korps never expected. A machine of war, capable of overwhelming even the legendary panzers. And now, as the Shermans pour through the valley like a steel avalanche, Kruger understands the truth. The laughter is over. Everything is about to change. The valley is unrecognizable now. Where clean lines of German armor once stood, only chaos remains. Columns of smoke twisting into the sky, burning hulls glowing orange, shattered tracks littering the sand like broken bones. But the worst part isn't the destruction. It's the movement. Shermans swarming through gaps, circling behind retreating panzers, firing into their weakest armor points with ruthless efficiency. What began as a defensive push has become a rolling American offensive, fast, aggressive, unstoppable. Sergeant Bill Harkins grips the turret handles as his Sherman pushes deeper into the wreckage, engine roaring, treads crushing spent shell casings and debris. His commander points ahead. Panzer at 2 o'clock, backing up, fast. Harkins swivels the periscope. He sees it. A Panzer IV, damaged but still alive, limping backward in a desperate attempt to flee. The German commander is half out of the hatch, waving frantically to his own lines. A wounded predator trying to escape the wildfire. "Gunner, on him! Target up! Send it!" Boom! The Sherman's round hits the Panzer square in the turret wing. A flash, a blast, and the Panzer collapses into itself, smoke pouring from the hatches. Harkins exhales shakily. They've never fought like this before. They never needed to. But now the entire battlefield feels like it's tilting in their favor. And behind it all is Patton. Driving, pushing, forcing momentum into every corner of the valley. Up on the ridge, Oberfeldwebel Kruger watches the retreat unfold with horror twisting in his gut. Every doctrine he'd sworn by, speed, precision, concentrated power, has been turned against him. Every trick the Afrika Korps perfected has been outmatched by something faster, larger, and far more unpredictable. American improvisation, American aggression, American numbers, and most of all, American leadership. Patton has not only changed the way the Americans fight, he has changed the way they think. Through his binoculars, Kruger spots something that nearly stops his heart. A long line of Shermans sweeping through the valley floor in a coordinated crescent. An encirclement. A perfect one. As the jaws close, German tanks are forced into a tighter and tighter space, unable to maneuver, unable to retreat. Shermans fire from the flanks, pinning them. Infantry moves in behind them, cutting off escape routes. Artillery fire rains down from high dunes. A Panzer III tries to sprint up a ridge. It makes it 20 meters before a Sherman round smashes into its rear armor. The tank rolls backwards, hits a rock, and flips onto its side with a muffled explosion. Kruger slams his fist against the sandbags. "Hold the flank! Hold!" He freezes mid-sentence because he sees something that shakes him to his core. American tanks aren't stopping. A fresh wave is spilling over the ridge behind the first. Not 10 tanks, not 20. Almost an entire battalion. It isn't possible. It shouldn't be possible. Germany's intelligence estimates put American armored reserves far lower, barely enough for a sustained push. But Patton had changed everything. While the Germans relied on careful calculations and rigid operational planning, Patton relied on sheer force of will and audacity. He'd driven his divisions through harsh training, stripped away hesitation, and rebuilt morale with an iron hand. Now, the result was unfolding in front of Kruger. Americans fighting with terrifying momentum. Americans fighting like they want to win. The radio near him crackles with panic. "Panzer Group 5 destroyed, requesting reinforcements. We are surrounded! We're surrounded! Artillery positions lost, enemy armor behind us. We can't hold. Falling back! Falling back!" Kruger's throat tightens. The German counterattack has completely unraveled. This isn't a tactical retreat. This is a rout. He drops the binoculars, voice barely a whisper. This is not the same army we fought before. Down in the valley floor, Harkins watches German crews abandoning tanks, sprinting through smoke, waving white cloths, or dropping flat as artillery slams into their rear positions. The Africa Corps, once feared across continents, is disintegrating in front of him. And as another Sherman column awls past his position, their commander waving with a grim smile, Harkins realizes something profound. They aren't just winning a battle. They're witnessing a shift, a turning of the tide, a moment historians will look back on and say, this is when the Americans became a true armored power. The desert wind sweeps across the valley, carrying the crackle of burning steel and distant shouts. The sun sinks lower, casting long shadows across the wrecks. The laughter the Germans once had, the confidence they once carried, is gone, replaced by something they never expected from the Americans: fear. And the day isn't over yet, because Patton's orders are clear. Do not let them escape. The Shermans are preparing for one final push. Late afternoon settles over northern Tunisia like a smothering blanket, heavy, dusty, vibrating with the lingering echoes of explosions, but the battlefield itself is still moving, still alive, because Patton's Shermans aren't finished. Not yet. Colonel Paul Robinette, commander of Combat Command B, stands atop his tank with binoculars pressed tight to his eyes. Sweat trickles down his neck despite the cooling desert wind. Ahead of him, the last organized formations of the Africa Corps are pulling back, fast, disjointed, desperate. Robinette lowers the binoculars. They're running, he mutters. His operations officer nods. Order, sir? Robinette doesn't hesitate. Breakout formation, wide wedge. We end it here. Within seconds, radio operators are transmitting commands across dozens of armored platoons. Engines roar to life like a chorus of beasts awakening at once. A wide wedge.
A spearhead so large it can't be ignored and too fast to be countered. And at the center of it all, the M4 Sherman, roaring forward, kicking up waves of sand as they build momentum. German HQ, 4 kilometers east. Papers, maps, and dust swirl across the cramped command tent. Major General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim's officers are speaking over one another, reports colliding like ricochets. Left flank is gone, completely. Artillery batteries are overrun. Spearhead of American armor heading straight toward the crossroads. We can't stabilize anything without reserves. Von Arnim's hand shoots up. Enough! Silence, heavy and strained. Von Arnim steps toward the main map, but he doesn't look at it. He looks at the sand caking the knees of his pants, the tremor in the table, the faint rumbling outside. That isn't artillery, that's tanks. American tanks. So many that the ground itself vibrates beneath them. A realization flickers in his eyes, one he refuses to voice. This front might be lost. Back on the front line. The breakout wedge advances, Shermans in the center, tank destroyers covering the flanks, infantry trucks behind like an armored shadow, ready to spill out and hold captured ground. Sergeant Bill Harkins can feel the adrenaline surging as his Sherman closes into formation. Dust clouds rise around them like storm fronts rolling across open plains. Driver, keep it steady. Gunner, eyes sharp. Ahead, the last German tanks are attempting to form a defensive line along a low ridge, but it's thin, too thin. They're trying to brace for us, Harkins mutters. His commander smirks. Let 'em. The Shermans accelerate. A line of panzers opens fire, shells streaking across the valley, kicking up fountains of sand. But they can't stop the wedge. The Americans keep coming, faster, closer, stronger. Shermans fire on the move, their rounds smashing into defensive positions, throwing German gunners into disarray. Mortars rain behind the ridge, Browning machine guns rake the trenches. A Panzer IV hits a mine and erupts into a plume of fire. Another tries to backtrack, only to get boxed in by retreating armored cars. And then, the Shermans hit the line. Not figuratively, literally. Tracks grinding over abandoned guns, crushing barricades, smashing through sandbags as German soldiers scatter. The wedge doesn't slow, it doesn't swerve, it simply breaks the defensive line through sheer momentum. It is brutal, overwhelming, and unmistakably Patton. Push through, the commander shouts. Do not let them regroup. Harkins feels the impact of every shell landing around them, every jolt as they cross trenches, every shockwave trembling through the hull. Then, a massive explosion erupts on the left flank. A Panzer III fires point-blank into a Sherman, blowing its turret sky-high. Harkins doesn't have time to process the loss. Target that Panzer. On it! The gunner fires. A hit.
glancing. Again! The second round punches through the Panzer's side armor. Flames burst from the hatches. The Sherman wedge keeps advancing, through smoke, through fire, through whatever remains of the Afrika Korps' resistance. German lines begin to tear apart. Von Arnim's officers scramble out of the command tent as American armor pierces the ridge. The general steps outside just in time to see a distant Sherman battalion silhouetted against the setting sun, rolling forward like a wall of steel. He feels the truth settle like a weight across his shoulders. This is no longer a battle. It's a collapse, a forced unraveling of everything Rommel had once built. And the Americans, the same force they mocked only months before, have become the unstoppable engine of that collapse. Von Arnim turns to his adjutant. Begin withdrawal preparations. Burn anything we cannot take. But sir, this front is finished. The words taste like ash. Back in the Sherman, the wedge bursts through the ridge and spills into the open fields beyond. German trucks flee in every direction, some stuck in mud, some ablaze, some drifting driverless into ditches. Infantry squads try to form rearguard positions, but they're swept aside by combined tank and artillery fire. The path to the crossroads, the last supply artery for the German forces, is wide open. Harkins feels the shift. They're not just pushing the Germans back, they're breaking their ability to fight at all. The sun dips lower. Shadows stretch across the battlefield. The final phase is coming, and both sides know it. But only one side is ready for it. Only one side is driving toward it, and the Shermans haven't even reached their top speed yet. The road to the crossroads lies ahead, and whatever happens there